down.
I got an invite from Paul this morning at 5:30. So 5:30.
Yep, good.
Okay.
I also had down tentative finance meeting tomorrow. Is that like an old date?
I think it might be an old date,
Yeah, okay.
like pre-COVID madness.
Yep. Hey, Kate.
Hey, yeah. I was hoping I was coming in on the right invite here. My calendar's getting a little cluttered.
Oh, I know.
Hey, Kate.
What's up, Sarah?
And we are already up on YouTube. I've got Dawn helping us today to make sure that we can maintain that live stream.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane. And thanks, Don, for joining.
Sure.
Oop, I think we actually have everybody, so we can probably get started on time in another minute or so. Kate, do you have the agenda in front of you? If so, would you mind sharing?
All right, so I'm experiencing finger difficulties. I pulled up the supporting docs, but I didn't get the agenda yet. Let me grab hold of that real quick here.
Okay, no worries. I think it's pretty general anyway.
It does have the links on it, but people would have to go and find it. So I can grab that here. Diane, are you the host on this one?
Right now, Don is the host only because he's making sure that we're not going to lose our YouTube connection. And then because we seem to drop that connection off in the first 5 minutes of our meetings lately. So once that is set to go, then we're going to swap back. So then I can help bring people in and out of the meeting.
So in terms of screen sharing, Don, can you give me permission to share a screen? Or is that going to fluff us up?
No.
I think if he makes you a co-host, that should work.
Yep. Let me do that right now.
Good morning, America.
All right, go ahead and give it a try, Kate.
Thank you. Let's see. There it is. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kate.
Welcome.
Cool. So I think we can go ahead and call to order the School Board Finance Committee meeting for May 19th. For those of you who are joining us from the community, I just wanted to reiterate at the top of the meeting a couple of ways to participate in public comment. So as a finance committee, we actually take our public comment at the end of the meeting. So we only have 2 agenda items and about an hour. So this meeting ends at 3 p.m. So we'll leave plenty of time for public comment at the end, probably stop around, aim to stop discussion around 2:45, 2:50. So we have plenty of time for public comment. And there's a couple of ways you can submit that. So when we get to the public comment period, if you're on Zoom, if you just raise your hand, we'll acknowledge you and we'll pull you in to be able to speak, and you can make your comment at that point. Or if you would like, you can send an email to publiccomment@scarboroughschools.org, and we'll go ahead and read that comment at the end of the meeting. Cool. So we actually have kind of a light agenda to go through, but I did just want to get this meeting in to make sure that we had time as a group to align and prepare for the upcoming meetings with Town Council. So this afternoon we have the department review with the Town Council Finance Committee, and then tomorrow we have the Town Council 0% modeling workshop, which I believe everyone on this call has been invited to as a panelist as well. So I want to go through those 2 items, but first, just as I've done in the past couple of meetings, I just want to give a recap as to where we are with the overall process, and then give anybody the opportunity to add or sort of ask questions before we dive into the preparation for those meetings. So as a reminder to the public, the reductions proposal that have been proposed and shared at this point, all of which are available as supplemental material on our website under the Finance Committee. Those are proposals that have been put forward by Sandy and his leadership team, so the department heads and the principals of each school. That now sits with the Finance Committee, and sort of it's our role now to take that, ask questions, and provide feedback, and kind of go back and forth with the Leadership Council until it's something it's in a place where we as a Finance Committee can sort of endorse and support it to the rest of the board for their approval, ultimately looking for that approval before our second reading, which is in a couple of weeks. In parallel to that, there's sort of a separate discovery track that's happening at the request of Town Council, which is a 0% modeling workshop. So it's taking place tomorrow night. 0% tax rate increase is not a directive from Town Council. It is an exercise that we're going through, and I think we've all said this publicly, and we'll reiterate it again tomorrow night, that 0% is not something at the current state that anyone, well, I guess I'll speak for myself, that I can support, and I think I speak fairly confidently for the rest of the board, as well as the leadership, that that's not something that we at this point can support. However, we do think it's an exercise that could call more attention and create a little bit more transparency about how drastic a 0% budget would be to our district. So that is tomorrow night. So if anyone is interested, I would urge you to tune into that. Another key date for people who are watching is on Thursday night, we have our regular school board meeting, which is also a public hearing for the budget. So we'd encourage people to come and share their feedback. If you're looking for like what is the actual budget to give feedback on, the current state would be the leadership council proposal that's put forward that shows the different tiers. So tiers 1 through 4 is where we would need to get to in order to meet the goal that has been set by Town Council at first reading. So that's just a summary of where we are. I don't know, April or Michelle, if you guys want to add anything.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Cool. All right, I think we can move on for then preparation for this afternoon town council department meeting. So what, and Sandy, jump in here if you'd like. What I've been told is that we don't necessarily need to present anything new. It's really just an opportunity for them to ask questions, a lot of which they've actually sent over by email already. And I think, Kate, hopefully the information we shared with them yesterday has answered some of those questions. But Sandy, I don't know if you have any additional information from Tom on, or if you're planning to present anything or just kind of show up and be ready to answer questions.
Yeah, tomorrow night, certainly, I think Tom's planning to share some information. If it need be, I'd be happy to share more information. It all really depends if they have more questions about our budget or anything, if they wanted to even give money back or take money away. I'd be open to that conversation as well.
Okay. Just to confirm, you said tomorrow night. That's actually this afternoon now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Tomorrow night's the workshop. There's
Right.
a lot of dates happening, so I just don't want people to get
Correct.
confused. So thanks. Okay. I know April just messaged that her audio just dropped, but I know that some of the questions that have been consistently raised by town council are questions around the CIP. So I didn't know if it's worth maybe starting off the presentation or the meeting with them, just going into our CIP budget in a little bit more detail, covering off what we've cut as part of the reductions and opening it up from there.
I had a little conversation with Colette about what she was posting on her side for the meeting and what kind of material we were bringing. And I think both of us threw up our hands a little bit because there's just been so much material put out there that people already have. So maybe the most logical thing is for us to sort of, for me to have things at my hands and be able to pop them up on the screen as we go along. But I do agree that there's a CIP doc that we made that shows where we started with first reading and where we are with the proposals that are on the table now. Would you want me to pop those up here for us? Or are you just thinking in terms of what we should have ready for the next conversation?
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of what we need to have ready for them. So I think that's a good point, unless there's anything that's changed since we saw, was it Friday?
Right. No, we haven't, the leadership team hasn't taken any more action since we presented to you guys last week. So, so I'm just going to jot down some notes about what I need to have like queued up, ready to go. And yeah, I think that's definitely one of them.
Okay. If April, are you back on audio yet?
I hope so. Is my audio okay on your end?
Yep, it's good. Yeah, we were just talking, April, about the CIP budget, as we know that that's going to be an area that town council has some questions.
Yes.
It sounded like you had a conversation with Councillor Gleistein, so I didn't know if you wanted to sort of prep Kate and Sandy with any of those questions in advance.
Well, I wish I could prep you better. If I'm being honest, I took the call while I was driving, and I was driving the Jeep. And so not only was I trying to talk on the phone, but I'm trying to drive my husband's 6-speed, and and I was trying to recall the spreadsheets as best I could, the questions that Betsy was asking me, and she's being very thoughtful and very careful, and just wanted some clarification on where we stood with the CIP budget. And so I think just making sure that town council has the updated spreadsheet that you mentioned, Kate, and maybe giving the public a reference to where that can be found, so that they can follow along. I know that there's a lot of documents circulating, and so sometimes it's it's easy to lose things in the shuffle.
Right. And I think that's one of the documents that we sent at the end of last week in preparation for our Friday meeting. So there was just a flurry of stuff that we were shooting back and forth.
Okay.
So I'll definitely pull that one up, and I can share screen while we're talking, and that's easy enough because we can go through things. But then in terms of where to post it, I can share it with Colette and ask her to put it on the town council side if they want it, or we can post it with today's documents as well.
Okay.
I mean,
Posting it on our side with today's documents is more than enough. And Betsy may have very well been referencing the most updated version, but since I didn't have it in front of me, I just wanted to give Sarah a heads up, and then by extension, you guys, that that was something that she had wanted to talk about this afternoon.
Thanks, April. I think the other area that has come up, and I know you guys have included this as part of the reduction proposal, are the impacts of COVID-19, both in additional costs and cost savings. And I know you have that incorporated. I was having a conversation with Hillary earlier, and I see actually that she's an attendee. So Hillary, you can raise your hand if you want to join and share this yourself. I don't want to steal your idea, but I think what she raised, which I think is an interesting question, is how we fund COVID-19 expenditures, and if it can almost be a separate bucket than the general fund. The reason for that being, right now, if you look at the tier reduction proposal, right, it's, hey, we have to add all the stuff back in before we can actually start talking about reducing. And if those costs increase in the fall, then are we going to be in a position where we're going to have to make additional cuts that we're not really prepared for? And so it's almost like if there's a way that we can separate the two, so we have like the COVID-19, we have the general fund, which we get approved, and then we have a separate COVID-19 sort of mitigation bucket, but that's not included as part of the overall reduction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm thinking with my accounting hat, and so the thing that kind of constrains us in terms of spending is that our general fund's gone to the voters, and the voters have said, you have this many dollars to spend, and we can't exceed that. So I think what Hillary's saying is that if we are in a position where we need to spend an extra $500,000 on unexpected things that arise because of this situation, we've got to find that in the budget that's already been approved, which means cutting other things. And going through the process that we've just gone through in the past few weeks, there's not going to be a whole lot left that we can easily take out of there to support those needs. So yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about that too. And we've talked about contingency accounts within the general fund, but we haven't really talked much about outside of the general fund. And, you know, perhaps creating like a reserve account or something like that, which I'd have to check and see whether that would be a permitted use for a reserve fund. But it's an interesting suggestion. We would still need to have the town council's approval, but it wouldn't be a voter approval. And it wouldn't limit the amount of spending that we'd have. I think the question would be, how would we fund it?
Yeah.
Like
The other way
if it's
Go ahead,
tax
Tracy.
dollars, then it has the same impact on the bottom line that the general fund does, but it gives you more flexibility in how to spend it.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about is I almost wonder if we would be better off taking that out of the reductions proposal. And so I'm kind of thinking and talking at the same time, so bear with me here. But if we take it out of the reduction proposal, and that way the reduction proposal just has, you know, reductions, and then we have a separate COVID. So we can say to town council, okay, here's what we've done. We've met your goal. But then we also have these additional things that we need to add back in. So really, we hit your goal, but we now are asking you almost to allow for a little bit more flexibility to kind of give us a little bit more breathing room to add these things back in. And so they're two distinct sort of phases in. So we get to the number that's accomplished, but then we actually have to add some money back in, which ultimately means instead of the 1.6, I think that the mill rate was with the combined tax and school, maybe it ends up being slightly higher than that. But I think that those costs, because they're related to COVID-19, may be a little bit more acceptable to the town council. Did I explain that correctly?
If I'm hearing you correctly, Sarah, what you're saying is that if we did that, we've got, I don't have it up on the screen here, but we have $162,000 of nurses and we have $128,000 of other things. And I know there's quite a bit beyond that as well. So if we took that out, then we would get to a $2 million reduction a lot quicker, right? And we might be able to preserve some of those things that we're so worried about cutting. So I love the idea. I'm not sure whether I'm not sure whether we will get to add things back. I mean, I think it's a valid way of presenting the situation. We're making the cuts based on our normal budget. We're making these proposed reductions based on what we put out there for first reading and what we thought was going to be our life next year. And now there's this other track that's going on where we're seeing new needs. And I'm sure the town must be as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can't
get
the page up here.
I don't know, April or Alicia, if you guys have any thoughts on that. I mean, basically it would be restructuring the proposal before the meeting this afternoon, which I know is a lot of work, Kate, but.
I mean,
yeah, I think my only issue would be I wouldn't be able to hit exactly the right $2 million reduction number necessarily. I mean, I could change some numbers, but I think that you want to do that a little more thoughtfully than between now and 4 o'clock. No disrespect, of course, because it's a cool idea, but just because I don't know then what you would want to preserve. Like, does that knock off tier 4 and leave us with tiers 1 through 3? Or is there going to be a more thoughtful conversation about what's in all the tiers? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can appreciate that. This is, I really like this train of thought though, Sarah, and I appreciate what you're, like the spirit of what you're saying is, here's our operating budget and you asked us to reduce it down by a certain dollar amount, which we did, but it's being inflated again by these very necessary things that we're trying to be responsible and plan for next year. And so it's a little bit of semantics, like, you know, is it the dollar amount that we're really focused on, or is it the need that we're really focused on? Because what we're trying to say is, okay, we're going to really tighten our belts on all of these other things that we would normally have in our general fund operating budget. But then how do we also make sure that we plan responsibly for the future? And are we being expected to plan for the future with that same constraint on us? And that is, I hadn't thought of it that way. I think that's a valid question.
Well, we did originally when we started talking about these tiers. We have, I think, in public meetings said that there is this other track going on, that there's the reduction process, that's sort of normal budget refinement, well, maybe a little more than normal budget refinement, but then at the same time, we're continually getting new information about the needs that are created by this, the COVID-19 situation. So we had talked, I think, publicly about the fact that there were kind of two tracks going on, that there was, you know, the budget reductions, but then also the budget adds. And so I think what you're saying is that there might be a way to describe that differently, to break that out differently. I think if we add if we add the ads, I think we come up with about $430,000.
Yeah, which is significant, but also it may also not be enough, right? A lot of this is just guesses.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So.
My thought, Sarah, is to get guidance from the town council about what their thoughts are and see if they are open to that line of thought, and ask them to help us brainstorm how we will plan for that.
Yep.
I would think that they would have, maybe not quite the same level of concern, because they're not bringing large groups of young people together and staff together in schools the way that we are. But I'm sure they're probably having some of these same conversations of, oh my gosh, we're going to need X, Y, and Z to be able to stay open to the public and serve the public.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest, Kate, that you rework this before 4. So sorry for saying that, but yeah, I think this at least is a conversation that we can have.
Well, I have this magic wand that I use quite regularly, but I think if the council is open to the concept of presenting this into categories, then the work then is to go back through the 4 tiers and say, okay, so if we don't need to account for $430,000, how does that change what we're presenting here as a potential reduction?
I think it's worth talking to the council. I think both lanes could help the school system better, and certainly it would make sense at least to have a conversation with them about it.
Sounds good.
It kind of reminds me a little bit about our conversations last year when we talked about, okay, normal stuff and then crazy enrollment increases. Can we talk about those as different cost drivers and call them out?
Right. Right. And then the other point that I think Hillary made as well, so again, I don't want to steal her ideas, and she hasn't raised her hand, so I assume that means she doesn't want to talk, is presumably some of these costs are one time, maybe 2 times. We don't know. And so, like, do we want to add $500,000 back into our general operating budget as a multi-year cost, or is it just going to be a 1-year cost? It's just, I think there's just a lot of unknowns, which makes this whole process difficult, as we all know. But I think having the conversation with them tonight or this afternoon is fair. Good way to approach it. Okay. Anything else on preparation for the meeting with town council this afternoon?
I do.
Okay.
I just hope that everybody uses this as an opportunity to express to them our concern about the impact of these cuts. We've made so much progress in collaborating with them and respecting the difficult situation that they're in, and trying to get a respectful budget to their constituents. And I think that's important, but I also think that in doing that, we haven't pushed back sometimes in ways that we really need to. And I think that we're just at this critical mass when we're looking at some of these tiers, and really need to express to them the devastation that's going to come as a result of these cuts, because I think that logically they're thinking of, we're going to be losing revenue, we've got people that are out of jobs, and that's their focus. And I think that we need to remind them that this is going to impact our schools for years to come, and that it's going to take it's going to require costs in other areas, and just assure that they're looking at it from that lens as well.
Yep, good point. Okay.
Sarah, I wanted to ask,
Anything else?
I did
Okay.
want to ask real quickly. I noticed that one of the things that you had sent over to the council side of things that Colette called up for me was the little summary that I did about year-end surplus. And I think somewhere back a while ago, I heard that that was a point of interest as well of, why are we choosing this particular amount of surplus? Why are we adding some and not adding all of it and stuff like that? Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I think it slightly could be related to COVID-19 as well when you look at like the cost savings and why we're,
Right.
I think you had originally calculated that we'd have about 800,000 in cost savings, which is why you said 400,000 in the fund balance for this year, and then you would save 400 for next year. So I think just an explanation on that is probably what they're looking for.
That may be just enough detail for that answer. Okay, cool.
We're still under the recommended amount for fund balance, even with that, aren't we, Kate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the recommendation is actually kind of it's the negative of that. You can't hold more than 3% of your annual budget unless you have a plan to spend it in the ensuing years. So what we've been doing is rolling it forward as revenue in the next year's budget. And yeah, we're well below that right now. We're well below the 3% and have been for quite a few years now. The only bump in that was when we had that Wentworth debt service transfer of money.
Right. Okay. Cool. All good on the department meeting? Awesome. So the next, I just want to spend a couple minutes talking through the workshop tomorrow night, the 0% modeling workshop. I think, Kate, you have it up already. So we haven't seen beyond tier 4. So if you want to just take us through those, that would be great.
Trying to make this bigger and I'm getting in my own way here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to scroll us down here to the bottom of tier 4, and that's where we start, where you folks have seen, you've seen so far to the bottom of that section, and then I'll have Sandy kick us off and get us into the next tiers. I will say that we did start with 6 tiers, and we ended up dividing it into 5, 6, and 7 because we were loosely modeling sort of a 0.5% decrease in the tax rate based on the numbers that we got from the town. So it was sort of like 3 different chunks of reduction that would get you below where we were at about 1.5% increase on the tax rate.
Okay, want me to go through each section? Does that work, Sarah?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, a proposal, which we're not excited to recommend, is to eliminate a K2 behavior specialist position and reduce that by 0.5. And again, that's a special ed position that is needed within the elementary level. The next line is not to hire the 3 building ed techs, and just hold off on that. That would be 70,000, just over 70,000. And then there's the high school teacher position, which that would reduce from the final core content area. And again, we're not excited to have this happen, but it's a proposal for your consideration. And then the other one is a K2 building ed tech. Eliminate the 0.4% of that position. And again, that's at the elementary level. So that tier 5 would be 2.4 positions. And that's our best thinking at this point in time. I don't know if, Kate, if there's anything more you want to add to that?
Just to say that loosely, that takes you down by a 0.5 percentage point on the tax rate increase. So again, just working from some rough numbers that I got from Ruth.
So the defer hiring 3 building ed techs, those are all at the elementary level, is that right?
Yes.
Would it be helpful to have, I'm wondering, to have Allison participate and explain why we have such high need for behavioral specialists and ed techs at that level, and what the need of our students is at that level, and how it's been changing. I just wonder if I understand that because I've heard that presentation before, but if you're not familiar with those facts and how much these kids require support, then to me that may not look as significant, and I think that the story behind it is really important.
I've just brought her into the meeting, so she should be able to do that.
Thank you. Well, and I don't even mean maybe today, but I mean when the budget is presented to town council. I'm more worried about for town council, so I don't know if she's available, if anybody agrees that that would be worthwhile, if that's appropriate, and if she's, if we could do that. But I just think that the explanation holds so much value.
I do agree, and yeah, go ahead, Allison.
No, I was just going to say I'm happy to participate in whatever forum you feel is appropriate.
Thank you.
Thanks,
yeah, we
Allison.
might have you ask you to join the workshop tomorrow night then with town council if you're available.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, tier 6, as you can see, again, a 6 through 8 teacher position would be reduced, and class size, the range would be 22 to 24. High school library ed tech, again, it would impact the library and study hall, and I'm not really excited about that position as well, to have it reduced. But that would be a savings of $47,000. Then a K through 2 instructional coach. Throughout the district, we have instructional coaches. And that would be a position as well. And then the middle school connections teacher is a full-time position. And I'm going to have Diane just explain what middle school connection teacher does, just in case people might not know.
Yeah, so this is an academic support position. Actually, we added it into the budget for the 1920 school year. If you remember when we made that ask to you prior to this year, that was an ed tech position that provided academic support to students who had executive functioning issues, who were general education students, not special education students, through the Bridge program. And by making that a teaching position, we were able to continue that support, executive functioning for general education students, but we also were able to add in a number of classes around social emotional learning. And so she was working with, again, small groups of regular education students to support some of the social emotional learning needs so that they could be more successful in the general curriculum.
Tier 7, grades 3 through 5, academic support ed techs, 2 of them. Then there's a K through 2 special ed behavior specialist, full-time position, and a speech therapist, certified assistant, full-time position as well. And again, these are proposals. Makes us nervous knowing that special ed always increases with students, and you have a great reputation in Scarborough for not only academic, regular ed, but your special ed department is top notch. And it's just risky when we propose to reduce special ed staff because it can come back to bite you given the numbers of students that will probably move into the district. So again, I just want to stress these are our ideas, proposals. I didn't go into this work to reduce budgets. It's painful. It's not fun. But we've tried to do the hard work. And again, here are some ideas.
Sandy, can you explain the speech therapist position's an assistant position, right? Not a fully certified speech therapist. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, I don't know what the qualifications are over time, but to be a full-time speech therapist, you have to go to school for, probably 6 years or so. And then they have these certified assistants that somehow they get certified and they work towards trying to become a full-fledged speech therapist. But I'm not up to speed exactly what the requirements are. I think it's just the number of years of schooling and experience. But that might be a question for Allison at a later point. I think she can obviously answer that better than I can. It is an opportunity to service students, though, and usually I gather that certified assistant would be under the qualifications of a full-fledged speech therapist.
I was wondering that. Do they sort of help deliver the like if there's an activity or something that that's supposed to be practiced weekly, they help deliver that to the students, or how, I'm wondering how that works.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm not
okay.
sure.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Allison. Allison can speak to this pretty quickly, probably.
Okay.
Thanks, Diane.
Yes, the original proposal was for another full-time speech therapist. And then given the budget process, I reduced that to a speech assistant. That requires a bachelor's degree with a specialized training, whereas our speech therapists all have master degrees. The speech therapist assistant needs to work under the direct supervision of a speech therapist, so their caseload is under the speech therapist supervision. They can carry out all services, but they cannot do evaluations. We have been very successful with this model with OTs. We've had a CODA, a certified assistant occupational therapist, for at least 15 years, very highly skilled, but she does work under the supervision of an OT, and we have to incorporate that caseload in the regulatory compliance with caseload numbers under the certified OT. And again, they can provide all services except for evaluations.
What grade level is that?
We haven't determined, it most likely would be at the 3 through 5 level, because right now we have pieces of people, and I'm trying to reduce the lack of efficiency with staff traveling to multiple buildings during a day to provide service. I'm wanting to get more direct instruction out of our staff time than travel time.
What's the caseload, Allison, for a speech therapist?
They can carry no more than 50, which is the same for PT, social work, and speech, and OT. But the reality is they also all do 504, have 504 caseloads. So we try to keep the special ed caseloads in the 30s.
Okay, thank you.
Allison, do you have, I think it was right around this time last year that you were able to give some sort of indication as to what the enrollment would look like for next year in terms of special education needs. Do you?
Talking about our little ones, our incoming K students. Yes, we have. Yep. We have recently completed all of our CDS meetings. There are 4 outstanding CDS referrals still. So we are looking at bringing in the low 30s. We have 5 students that require one-on-one adult support, and all of those students happen to live in the 8 Corners section of town accessing that school. So right now I'm meeting with all the K2 buildings this week and reviewing all of their caseloads and making some shifts. We have some significant emotional and behavior regulatory needs of students coming in. So we originally were up to 38, and then we dropped to 27. We had some students move, some move in, but I think within that realm of 4 more, we're pretty settled on our numbers. So we continue to be maintaining that over 30 growth for the last 3 years.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, is how that compares. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is the 5 or are the 5 one-on-one kids, 5 kids that require one-on-one support, is that consistent with the way you've been trending as well?
Yes, it's just not always been located all in one building.
One school, yeah.
2 of those are functional life skills students last year. So some years we don't have any of those high level needs. And then 3 are behavioral support students' needs.
Okay.
So again, it reinforces that we did add that 3rd special ed classroom to 8 Corners last year, because we had a big influx, and that that's continued this year as well.
Thank you. I really think that those numbers are helpful, Allison. I appreciate that information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
So that's it for, we're at the bottom of tier 7 right there.
I have a clarification question, Sandy, or Kate, just based on what we're looking at here. So Kate, can you scroll up a little to the bottom of the tier 4 reductions to the yellow box that highlights all of the positions? Yep, right there. So that bottom box only covers the reductions in staffing through tier 4, correct?
That's correct. And if we go to the bottom of this work of this attachment that's posted on our agenda items, I've actually created a chart that shows staffing changes through all 6 of the tiers.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get to that. There's a lot of stuff in here. So this really busy chart, we thought this was a good way of looking at it. We were looking at this in our leadership team. Starts with the pink is the first reading budget, and it's broken out by phase, and then special services and district-wide. And then it works its way through the tiers and shows you the changes, just staff, that we're proposing for each one of the tiers, and gives you a total by phase and then sort of a running total at the bottom. And then at the bottom of this, there are more summaries, like you saw at the end of tier 4, one going through tier 4 only and one going through tier 6. I'm sorry it's so tiny.
Oh, that's okay. I want to make sure I'm looking at all the most up-to-date documents, and that I had forgotten that this had a second page. So I see it now. Thank you.
It never ends.
Okay. Do you guys have any other questions on the proposal for tomorrow night?
I don't.
April looks like she's still thinking.
Just counting, unfortunately. No, I just wanted to make sure that I have an understanding of all of the positions that go all the way through tier 7. I think we've talked about them all. I think I understand the impact.
I just noticed that my label on that bottom one says through tier 6, but it actually goes all the way to
Through
the
tier 7. Okay.
end. Yeah, I have to fix my label.
Okay. Sandy, have you spoken to Tom about the format, or Paul about the format of the meeting tomorrow night?
I think, what Tom suggested, that we could walk in, and again, I don't think it's anybody's recommendation on the board here to go to 0%, but I think they would like to see what that might look like for tomorrow evening. Not that they are going to force us to get to that level, but they want to know the impact, I think, would be helpful to them.
Yep. Now, I assume, because I think it's changed slightly since we last presented it to them, that you're going to cover tiers 1 through 7 and not just tiers 5 through 7?
Correct. Yeah, because they haven't really had that opportunity to go 1 through 7. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, obviously it's a workshop, so I don't think we're expecting any decisive action to come out of the meeting tomorrow night, but wherever possible, you know, if we can bring people like Allison in to talk about the impacts that these cuts will have, or Mike or whoever we need to, just to have on call and available to be able to speak more to some of the impacts, I think that would be really valuable.
We talked about that today at the Leadership Council, and the cost center managers will be there tomorrow night to answer any questions specific to their reductions.
Great.
Thank you. I know that's a lot to ask, so thank you.
Kate, were you around the last time that teacher positions were cut?
Yes, I had that pleasure. I've been here a very long time.
Do you know how long it took to get those positions back into the budget? How many years?
I would say it took us from 2009, which was the first budget that we beat up. 10 was still reductions. 11 and 12, we started to put back a few things. And it really wasn't until 14 and 15 that we actually were able to restore most of what we had lost. And of course, we didn't go, person for person, because in some cases, the reductions we made, we didn't want to restore them for whatever reason, that we'd moved in a different direction. But it's a multi-year process for certain, sure. I actually have a document that I could share with you guys about, that sort of multi-year turnover.
I just thought it might be helpful for them to hear how long it took, for town council to hear how long it took to restore some of those positions, and how that wouldn't necessarily include meeting any of the new needs of our students, but just getting us back to level.
Right, and that's a really good point, Alicia, because in those days we weren't facing enrollment increases.
Right.
We weren't facing some of the heavier needs that some of our special education programs are requiring. So, I mean, we were able to just kind of go person for person and say, yeah, oh, we need another English teacher, and it was status quo on our enrollment.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
Do we have projected class size, say K-5, based on these budget, like based on this budget reduction? Like, do we know what the average class size at each of the primary schools will be, K2 versus Wentworth? Like, what the impact of these reductions would have on class size?
We do. If you actually look in the document, where
The same one that I can't, I keep
sorry. It's in the notes. So I believe if you look at K-2, the average class size, again, that varies from grade to grade because of the specific enrollment and the small number of teachers at each site. But K-2 is at 16 through 20 with our current projections. 3 to 5 is 20 to 22. And then grade 6 and beyond would be 22 to 24.
And I think that we had talked about having some kind of a chart that shows how that compares with what we currently have. Monique was putting some material together on that, because I think there is a point to be made here that in some cases, reducing a teacher position is less harmful because of the enrollment at that phase than it might be in another phase. And of course, that's all leaving aside anything to do with social distancing, which is going to be an interesting challenge.
Right. That's where my question is coming from, because I know that people are nervous at what this is going to look like. And I'm a proponent of small class sizes. And not just because I have young kids. I've been in our schools and I've seen that those physical class spaces were not built for 20 children. And so I always kind of beat that small class size drum, even when we're not in a pandemic crisis budget situation. But just trying to wrap my head around how we're going to budget for, or how we're going to absorb is the word that's coming to mind, additional students into classes where we're also trying to take CDC guidelines into consideration. I'm having a hard time reconciling some of the budget reductions, how anybody can do this, how we're going to make this work.
Well, plus the cost benefit analysis is, I mean, didn't you tell me the math on a $350,000 house, the difference between a 2% increase and a 0% increase was, what was it? Do you remember? It was like a couple of $100s, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then if you take just the school portion out of that, that's like $100 maybe a home in potential tax consequence. And so if you, I mean, when you look at people's tax burden overall, it may be really hard and difficult for them, but the cost benefit analysis just in these two changes from 2% to 0%, the destruction that will do to our schools versus the amount of money that these individuals will be saving, it's really just doesn't seem like it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree, Alicia. I mean, this is anybody who's been following the budget for a long time knows that that's one of the talking points that resurfaces every couple of years, is what the actual tax impact is for each percentage point that the mill rate increases. And I can't find my notes right off the top of my head, but it is something like for each half percentage point that we go down, it decreases the tax ask for someone in a $350,000 house by about $52. And so, to frame it that way makes it seem like it would be such a small impact on the taxpayers to not have to scrape our school budget down to nothing. To be fair, the other side of that conversation that often plays out is that it's $52 this year, and then it's $52 next year, and it's $52. And so by the time you've gone 10 years down the road, that $52 is several $100s. And so I'm not advocating for that, either side of the conversation, but that is the two different ways to look at the actual dollar amount that we attribute to increases in the mill rate.
Thank you, my math friend.
Just conscious of time here, and I want to leave time for public comment. So while we're wrapping up, I'll just say to anybody who's listening, if you do want to make a public comment, just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll give you the chance to do that, and then we'll come to you in a second. I guess just to wrap up our conversation, Sandy, I think my one request in terms of the meeting tomorrow night, the workshop, is as you're going through each tier, is in addition to just explaining what it is, to making sure that we're providing commentary as to the impact, but also feedback that we've gotten, because we've already gotten a lot of feedback from this from teachers and parents and just community at large. I think, and I think in large part, Town Council has seen a lot of those emails, but I know not all of them have been sent over email. So where possible, and Alicia, April, and I can support you on this as well, is providing some color as to what the feedback has been on these reductions as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any public comments. Let me just check the email.
Denise Blaine.
Oh, I see one from Denise Blaine. Yep. Diane, do you mind bringing Denise over?
She should be all set.
Okay, Denise, you just need to
Can you
unmute yourself and you're free.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. I just want to maybe get on my soapbox for just a second. Tier 7 is completely unacceptable, and I appreciate what all of you have been trying to do. Working with the town council, I can't remember a time where there's been this much, I guess, transparency and teamwork, for lack of a better term, between the town council and the school board. But I need to know, as a teacher and maybe in the future a resident of Scarborough, when do you push back, and I mean you, by the school board? It was a great exercise, 0%, but I am very, very fearful that 0% is going to be seen by people in the town as a way to finally get that tax increase stopped, for lack of a better term, that they've been wanting for a really long time, on the backs of COVID, on the backs of teachers, on the backs of students. When is the board going to say enough is enough? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but some of these cuts have already happened, and a budget hasn't even been approved. And some of the things in this budget, you might not even be able to take out, like the bus drivers, not hiring them. We don't know if we can put all those kids on a bus. Like, when are we going to put the brakes on this experiment? I mean, tier 4 is scary enough, but when I look at tier 7, this town should be horrified. And I just need to know going into tomorrow night's meeting that our schools are protected. So if there's anything that you think staff can do, parents can do, can you please just tell us now? Like, I'm feeling desperate, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess to answer your final question, and I want April and Alicia to chime in here as well, join the workshop and share your concerns directly. But also, you know, we've said this in the past, and we've also said this offline to town councilors directly. This is not something that any of us can support. And, you know, we have pushed back, and I'll take that feedback that you're giving on the head, and maybe we haven't pushed back loud enough or hard enough, and I own that. But you will hear that from us tomorrow night, and we are going through the exercise, and we are doing it in the name of collaboration. I think, you know, one benefit of doing this, and I don't know there are many, but one benefit that I can think of is that it puts it out there pretty loud, and it does create some engagement. And gives people the opportunity to come and say, this is unacceptable, just like what you're saying now. And so I would rather, if the alternative is them just doing it without this process, then I would rather this process so they can hear our feedback and our pushback, but also the feedback of the community members.
Thank you, Sarah.
You have another raised hand from Bill.
Yeah, I guess we can let him in.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Nick. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to first say, listening in to some of this conversation, I was a little bit late because of some work obligations, but I just wanted to say that the work you guys are doing regarding this very sensitive information and really digging into the evidence of this is commendable, because it's very hard to do this work, especially when the sands keep shifting. And there are so many things some things we haven't settled in our district. There are some timelines that have overlapped because of the extension of the election, but then deadlines for notifying some of our staff about potential cutbacks. And so I know that's been very, very hard. And what the last person just asked really piqued my interest, because when I think about what our staff and what our community can do, it's what they're doing, which is raising their voices and making themselves heard, and showing that this, while this exercise is important, the realities that it's illuminated are completely unacceptable for our students, for our schools. And the idea of it taking, and thank you, Kate, for saying this, taking 5 or more years to even get back to where we are at the end of this fiscal year, thinking what this district will look like in 5 or 6 years regarding our growth and our population. That's just something, and a setback that we can't afford. And so I think it's important. I'm glad people listening are hearing from all of you that the board is fighting this. We are talking about it to anyone that wants to ask. We appreciate all the emails and all the insight. There's a lot of passion there, but also a lot of logical and arguments. And so I just think we need to look at this in the bigger picture, and COVID is really unpredictable. And this exercise is alarming, but I'm hoping that alarm can turn to something productive as it mobilizes people to defend our schools, those on the board and those not.
Thanks, Nick.
You're welcome.
Any final comments or questions? Let me just check the inbox real quick one last time. Okay, awesome. I think we can go ahead and end it there, and we'll talk to you guys in an hour.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See you soon.